Good evening. This is Bedside Book Voice. Tonight we're reading Romance of the Three Kingdoms. If you're already lying down, you're in exactly the right spot. Dim the lamp a little. Set the phone somewhere out of reach. Pull the blanket up. Here's the scene. A man on his deathbed hands his 10-year-old son to another man. Also an entire kingdom. He says, if you think this child can be taught, guide him. If you think he cannot, take the throne yourself. The man who dared say that? Liu Bei. The man who received the trust, Zhuge Liang. When people in China talk about trust, they often point to this one night. But think a little longer. Is a father handing over his son's life and the realm's legitimacy to an outsider just trust? He even tells this outsider he can replace them. How much of that is trust and how much is helplessness? Well, this book is loud when it's loud. War drums, shouting, fire on the water. But its quiet places, those are especially good for night listening. Because it tells not only of battles, but of how people gather together, and how they scatter apart. Let's set a small set of rules first, nothing to memorize tonight. Nothing you need to fully understand. And no notes at all. Just let your mind follow my voice. When this story settles, you might carry away a few images. 3 men swearing an oath in a peach garden. A fire along the cliffs at Red Cliffs. Autumn wind on Wuzhang Plains that never stopped blowing. And a sentence from a sickbed at White Emperor City, one that people still turn over in their minds half a lifetime later. Fall asleep halfway through? That's fine. More than 70 years of story. Over 800 named characters. More than 1,000 battles. You don't need to keep track of any of them. Just hold on to a couple of images, that's more than enough. The story is long, and the night is long. We'll move slow. So, think about this, why did Liu Bei hand his kingdom to Zhuge Liang and even say those 4 words, you may take it for yourself? Don't try to solve it tonight. Treat it like a thin thread, let it rest beside your pillow. When we finally reach Liu Bei's defeat at Yiling, when we get to that sick, dark night at White Emperor City, we'll come back then. We'll untie the knot together. For tonight, just remember, there is no perfect answer waiting for you. Only one man's situation. And the weight of an entire age. Let's start with the book itself. Romance of the Three Kingdoms, it's usually credited to Luo Guanzhong, from the late Yuan into the early Ming dynasties. You're looking at China's very first full-length historical romance novel. Written chapter by chapter. It covers nearly 100 years, from the Yellow Turban Rebellion, right at the end of the Eastern Han, all the way to the early Western Jin when the realm finally came back together under one rule. More than 800 named characters appear in these pages. More than 1,000 battles, big and small. 120 chapters. And nearly 700,000 Chinese characters. But don't let those numbers scare you. Luo Guanzhong didn't invent everything out of nothing. The official history, Records of the Three Kingdoms, was written by Qin Shou back in the Jin dynasty. Later, Pei Songji added his own extensive commentary. Luo Guanzhong mostly drew from these 2 sources. So people often say Romance of the Three Kingdoms is about 7 parts history and 3 parts invention. The big events mostly have a real record, but a lot of the details, the conversations, the private thoughts, that's where the author stepped in and made it art. As we listen along, I'll try to point out what came from the actual history and what was added later for drama. Just a rough sense, that's enough. You may have played Three Kingdoms games when you were small, or watched the shows on TV. Those names were already in your ears, long before tonight. We are not going to rush the plot. Think of it this way, we are turning through this book like an old photo album at bedtime. Just page by page. On each page, we ask one thing: in this scene, how did people's hearts move? The greatest strength of the romance is making momentum visible. Like wind. If the east wind does not come, the fire attack gets nowhere. If trust breaks, the alliance disappears overnight. So why call it a romance? Well, romance here means to unfold and elaborate a story. The word carries the idea of principle and human meaning. Plainly, it tells historical tales and along the way, the feelings and truths inside them. This is not some dry list of dates. It is a massive book made to be read, heard, and returned to again and again. From the Ming Dynasty up to now, it might be the book Chinese people know best. Even if you never read it whole, you know the names Liu Bei, Guan, Zhang Fei, Zhuge Liang, Cao Cao. They are familiar friends. That makes them easy to approach, slowly, on a night like this. Let's set tonight's rule first: you don't have to keep every kingdom straight, and you don't have to remember who fought who. Last episode we followed Zhuangzi, one man drifting outward, another fishing by the Pu River and turning down the Prime Minister's seat. Tonight is a different world, honestly. Here, some people strain every sinew to gather men, gather momentum, gather the whole realm. Some calculate heaven and earth and human affairs down to the tiniest thread and still can't outthink fate. Zhuangzi showed you how to let go. The Three Kingdoms shows you how people struggle between gathering and scattering. When you first open Romance of the Three Kingdoms, 120 chapters might scare you off. But think about it, it's like a very long night road. You don't need to rush. Luo Guanzhong wrote it in chapters, and at the end of many, he leaves a line: if you wish to know what happens next, listen to the next installment. Same spirit as a bedtime story that says, we'll continue tomorrow. Tonight, we won't try to tell the whole book. We only want to lay its main trunk and a few of its most touching bones gently beside your pillow. The book opens with 9 characters: the empire, long divided, must unite, long united, must divide. Those 9 words sound like a bell. Everything that follows for 70 years is just an echo. In plain words, no territory stays together forever, and no force stays broken forever. When chaos reaches a certain point, someone will try to gather the pieces. Too long united, it splits again. The whole great drama of the Three Kingdoms swings open under those 9 words. By the end of the Eastern Han, the emperors were young. So regent families and palace eunuchs kept trading power. The government rotted. Disasters, both natural and man-made, just kept stacking up. Then the Zhang brothers started the Yellow Turban Rebellion, shouting, "The blue heaven is dead, the yellow heaven shall rise." The old order collapsed. The whole realm began to churn. Honestly, plain people couldn't go on living anymore. Someone raised a banner saying the old court was finished, and they wanted to begin again. In official history, the Yellow Turban swept across the Central Plains with enormous force. In the romance novel, they are simply the curtain rising on a great play. Cao Cao, Liu Bei, Sun Quan, they are all just men searching for a path through broken ground. Heroes and warlords and strongmen rose from the ruins. Each one carved out some territory and recruited soldiers. That is where the Three Kingdoms really begin. Not 3 states suddenly appearing on a map, but one empire shattered on the ground. Shattering hurts. And piecing it back together hurts even more. Tonight we only listen. You don't need to hurry for anyone, or pick a side. Just lie still. Slow your breathing. And listen. Before we get into the story, there's one name you can't skip. Liu Bei. You've heard the saying, among men, Liu Bei, among horses, red hair. The romance paints him as the greatest warrior under heaven. He served Ding Yuan, then Dong Zhuo, then Wang Yun, then Liu Bei. He drifted wherever food was offered. He died at White Gate Tower. In real history, Liu Bei was changeable too, but the romance takes it to the extreme. And when you set him next to the Peach Garden Oath later, the contrast is clear. In chaotic times, some people treat honor like it's their life. Some treat it like a chip to cash in. Liu Bei isn't the most important figure in the book, honestly. But he's the best reverse mirror. No matter how fierce you fight, if no one trusts you, you just can't gather momentum. Then comes one of the most misunderstood words in the whole story, loyalty. Brotherhood. The bond between sworn friends. This was the Jian era. In Zhuge County, there was a man who sold straw sandals, Liu Bei. There was a butcher, Zhang Fei. There was a fugitive, Guan Yu. In Zhang Fei's peach garden, they sacrificed to heaven and earth. They became sworn brothers. Their oath said, "We ask not to be born on the same day, month, and year, only to die on the same day, month, and year." That's the Peach Garden Oath. It's the beginning of Chinese sworn brother culture, and one of the warmest, most remembered scenes in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Let's not fuss over whether incense was really burned. What matters is what you see for yourself. In the records of the Three Kingdoms, the three men really were close, but the Peach Garden ceremony itself, that was invented by Luo Guanzhong. Still, think about this, in chaotic times, trust is the most expensive currency you can carry. Liu Bei had no territory and no army. All he had was a face and a heart. Guan Yu and Zhang Fei were willing to stake their lives on him. And later, he staked his life on them. That, in life, is the 2 or 3 people willing to carry hardship with you. On a team, that's your earliest core group. So how did they gather strength afterward? They joined Gong Sun Zan. Then Tao Qian. Then Cao Cao. Then Yuan Shao. Then Liu Biao. It sounds like job hopping, honestly. But a small team was searching for a platform where it could survive. For most of his early life, Liu Bei lived under other people's roofs. Kind of like a startup today, constantly seeking funding, searching for a scene, not lacking ability, just lacking the soil where roots could take hold. Only after Jing and Yi did he finally have territory of his own. So when you listen to the Three Kingdoms, don't just note who won which battle. Note also who waited. How long they waited before finding ground where they could plant their feet. Let's talk about Guan Yu just for a moment. In the romance, he crosses 5 passes and slays 6 generals. He rides 1,000 miles alone. He releases Cao Cao at Huarong Pass. They even say he carved the word loyalty right into his face. In official history, Guan Yu was famous for loyalty and courage too. But that whole journey through the 5 passes? Largely made up. Cao Cao treated him well, truth be told. When Guan Yu left, he sealed up the gold and returned the seal. That alone shows real backbone. So why invent 6 roads of pursuit? The release at Huarong was Luo Guanzhong's stagecraft. You see, Cao Cao had once shown Guan Yu kindness and Guan Yu remembered it. So the blade paused. Some curse him for letting a tiger go. Others honor him for never forgetting a kindness. There's no one answer here. But you'll feel it, he sometimes fights against the bigger plan. Guan Yu chose E. History chose another road. Later generations built temples for him, even crowned him emperor in name. He became the embodiment of loyalty in the Chinese heart. Yet the romance also shows his pride, how he slighted Eastern Wu, lost Jing province through carelessness. It reminds you, loyalty and arrogance are sometimes only one step apart. Think about Zhang Fei. At Changban Bridge he lets out one shout, and Cao Cao's army retreats 10 miles. The romance exaggerates, but the spirit is real. In official history, Zhang Fei is famous for courage. He and Guan Yu together are said to stand against 10,000 men. The romance just makes the drama louder. That one roar, and even the river seems to shake. Zhang Fei is loyal to Liu Bei. But he's often brutal to his own soldiers, drinking too much, beating men. In peaceful years you might call that a bad temper. In chaotic times it becomes a path to ruin. You see this type in real life too. Loyal to the boss, but he wounds his colleagues without knowing it. And eventually he wounds the whole team. Guan Yu loses Jing province. Zhang Fei gets assassinated. The brothers die one after the other, and the roots are buried in their own characters. Here's the thing, he cannot be spent without limit. Later, Guan Yu holds Jing while Liu Bei is in Shu. Sun Quan wants Jing back. Cao Cao wants to march south. Guan Yu fights on two fronts. Then Eastern Wu breaks the alliance. Lu Meng crosses the river in white disguises. Guan Yu escapes to Maicheng, gets captured, and is killed. When Zhang Fei hears the news, he weeps day and night. He beats his soldiers. His own men assassinate him. Liu Bei ignores everyone's advice and marches east to attack Wu. At Yiling he gets crushed. He retreats to White Emperor's city, entrusts his heir, and dies of illness. This is one of the heaviest stretches in the book. It's trying to tell you something plain. Yes, he pulls people close. But he alone cannot hold back the great tide. Guan Yu got proud, underestimated his enemy. Zhang Fei was rough, he lost people's hearts. Liu Bei put brotherhood ahead of state policy. That's just human nature, honestly. Luo Guanzhong wrote these scenes not to make you call anyone foolish. He wanted you to see that even the tightest brothers cannot escape what happens when circumstance, character, and fate meet. The Battle of Yiling, think about it, that battle deserves another moment. To avenge Guan Yu, Liu Bei threw the whole nation's army east at Sun Quan. Zhuge Liang and Jia Yan begged him to stop. He just wouldn't listen. Lu Sun was young, almost laughed off by Eastern Wu's old generals. Still, he burned those linked camps for 700 miles. Nearly wiped out Liu Bei's entire force. That battle was the turning point. Shuhan stopped rising and started falling. When emotion runs high, even the man best at using people misjudges. Liu Bei was known for benevolence, but in old age, he bound him tight. It's the same route, really, as Guan Yu losing Jing province. They handed to hot blood what should have been kept cool. Tonight, if you remember a time you paid too much for a burst of temper, the three kingdoms are not here to scold you. They're here to sit with you, quiet, while you admit it. Liu Bei retreated to White Emperor's city. He was gravely ill. The Crown Prince Liu Shan was still young. Inside Shuhan and outside it, nothing felt steady. Liu Bei knew a child and a few old ministers could not hold the state alone. So he called Zhuge Liang to his bedside. And he spoke those words you heard in the opening tonight: if the heir can be guided, guide him. If he lacks ability, you may take the throne yourself. Those words are in the records of the three kingdoms. That is history, not something from the novel. Now, think about it, the thin thread beside your pillow, you can finally untie. When Liu Bei said you may take the throne yourself, half of it was sincere trust. I know you. You won't usurp. The other half was forcing a hidden promise. You must assist my son fully. No second heart. Zhuge Liang wept. He said, I dare exhaust my limbs' strength, devote loyal service, and follow with my death. Later he truly did. He died on the northern road, still carrying that weight. So it was not an ideal brother's farewell. It was a father and a monarch, just before his breath ended, placing the heaviest burden onto one man's shoulders. Zhuge Liang took it. And carried it his whole life. To be entrusted, honestly, is pressure. To entrust is always a gamble. Tonight, think about it, is there someone in your life who is that person for you? Or have you entrusted someone like that? You don't need to answer. Just thinking is enough. Now, at this point, we must bring in the book's most important and most complex figure. Cao Cao. You came from Xiao and Pei, Cao Cao styled Mingda. Think about it, when the realm fell into chaos at the end of Han, you held the emperor and commanded the lords. You brought Emperor Xian to Xuchang, became chancellor, and in truth you became the greatest warlord. Later ages call you a crafty hero. In opera you wear a white face, as if everyone should shout you down the moment you appear. But read official history and you find another Cao Cao. You unified the north. You instituted Tunshan farming. You restored production and appointed men regardless of birth, merit above pedigree. Lu Sun once said you were a man who remade your age. That isn't whitewashing. It means you really built a machine that could run in chaos. Of course you also killed Kongrong. You massacred Shuzhou. You were suspicious and ruthless. That too is true. The romance honors Lu and denigrates Cao, painting Cao Cao darker than life. Read only The Mask and you miss a man who was very hard to sort into one box. Let's slow down and talk about tonight's story. In Romance of the Three Kingdoms, there's a famous scene brewing wine and discussing heroes. Cao Cao and Liu Bei are sitting together, drinking. Cao Cao looks at him and says, "The heroes under heaven are only you and me." Liu Bei is so startled his chopsticks hit the floor. Then thunder rolls across the sky. Liu Bei covers himself and says the thunder scared him. Cao Cao just smiles. Think about that moment, two men pretending, both knowing, still playing their parts. Cao Cao sees Liu Bei as a hero, a threat, and a kindred spirit all at once. Liu Bei plays the coward just to survive, just to wait for his chance. Around Cao Cao there were generals worth remembering too. Dian Wei and Su Chu died protecting their lord. At Wancheng when Zhang Xiu rebelled and Cao Cao fled, Dian Wei blocked the gate with his twin halberds. He died right there. That kind of loyalty is fierce and human. It feels different from Guan Yu and Zhang Fei's devotion to Liu Bei. Cao Cao was deeply suspicious, and yet men still died for him. Not just through fear, but through clear rewards and punishments and the bond of having fought side by side. Pure fear can't keep people loyal. Shared battles can. Cao Cao wrote something in his poem short song style that people still remember. Sing with wine held in your hand, how brief life is. Like morning dew, so many days have slipped away. You might think this is a tyrant's shout. But it isn't. It's just a middle-aged man sighing in a broken time. He was desperate for talent. He wrote about stars growing sparse, the moon clear and bright, crows flying south. Around a tree they circle, but find no branch to rest on. He meant, able men, come to me. Put that in today's words? It sounds almost like someone shouting, if you got skill, come try your hand here. His conquest wasn't smooth all through. At the Battle of Guandu, he beat Yuan Shao with fewer men, and laid the foundation for taking the north. Yuan Shao had more soldiers and more generals, but you know what? He was arrogant, wouldn't listen to his advisor Su Yu. So Su Yu got angry, and ran over to Cao Cao. Cao Cao raided Wuchao, burned Yuan Shao's grain, and the war flipped. That battle appears in history books and in stories. And what matters is this, having more resources doesn't win. A decision chain too long, a leader unwilling to hear anyone else, still ends in wreckage. If you've ever worked late into the night, you might get this one. You might not lack effort. But the direction was off. The busier you got, the more you lost. And even Cao Cao couldn't pass every barrier. Red Cliffs came next. In the 13th year of Jianan, Cao Cao marched south with an army 800,000 men, they said. He wanted to conquer everything in one stroke. Sun Quan held the southeast. Liu Bei was still a guest under other people's roofs, weak and alone. But they had to join hands. Zhou Yu and Huang Gai faked a defection. Pang Tong offered to chain the ships plan. And finally, Zhuge Liang borrowed the east wind. Fire burned Red Cliffs. Cao Cao was crushed and fled north. That battle locked in the three-way standoff, way in the north, Wu along the river, Shuani province. For a while, nobody could swallow the others. So, the Battle of Red Cliffs is in the history books. The romance added a lot of dramatic detail. You don't have to chase every fact. Just picture the momentum. Cao Cao lost not just because of bad tactics, his northern soldiers couldn't handle boats, disease spread, supply lines stretched thin, and the Sun Lu alliance stood strong. Honestly, timing wasn't on his side. The part about Zhuge Liang borrowing the east wind, that's myth from the romance. In reality, it means waiting for the exact right moment to act. A fire attack needs the southeast wind. Without it, every plan is nothing. Think about it, anyone trying something big must calculate human affairs to the limit. And then, still have to wait on heaven. After the Red Cliffs came a quieter battle, but it became more famous than the fire, the empty city stratagem. Picture Zhuge Liang up on the tower at Xiqing, burning incense, playing the zither. The city gates stood wide open. Old soldiers swept the streets like nothing was wrong. Sima Yi arrived with his whole army, paused, suspected an ambush, and withdrew. Honestly, this story doesn't appear in official history. It's one of the finest inventions in the romance. And here's the thing, it's not really a lesson in deception. It's a lesson in reading momentum. Think about it. Sima Yi was cautious his whole life. Better to miss a chance than rush toward disaster. Zhuge Liang was bold his whole life. Daring to gamble on an empty city, trusting the other man would not walk through the gate. They read each other's character like chess players reading hearts. So maybe that colleague or leader you know, the one who holds still when they could advance, they aren't lazy. They may just be waiting for you to see how careful they are. The empty city stratagem really shows you who fears losing more. Next, let's talk slowly about the man who carried half the three kingdoms on his shoulders. Zhuge Liang. Zhuge Liang, also known as Kongming, came from a little place called Yangdu in Langya. Before he left the mountains, he was just a farmer out at Longzhong. People called him the Sleeping Dragon. It took Liu Bei 3 whole visits to that thatched hut before Zhuge Liang would even talk. When he finally did, he laid out the Longzhong plan: hold Jing and Yi, form an alliance with Wu against Zhao, and split the realm in 3 parts. Now, this wasn't fortune-telling. It was just a smart strategy: first secure your bases, counter your strongest enemy, and when things shift, you push for the central plains. Liu Bei mostly followed that road, except he lost Jing, so the plan never fully happened. But you know, the direction was still right on. The 3 visits themselves, those are central to China's most famous story about sincerity. First time Zhuge Liang was out. Second time, still not home. Third time, Zhuge Liang was asleep, and Liu Bei just stood there waiting outside the door. Guan Yu and Zhang Fei got impatient. Why waste time on this nobody? But Liu Bei said, don't disturb him, wait right here in the hut. At that third meeting, Zhuge Liang pretended the world was too messy and he wasn't going to get involved. Liu Bei answered, if you don't come, what will become of the people? That one sincere line brought Zhuge Liang down the mountain. The romance tells all this beautifully. See, at that time Liu Bei had almost nothing. What he could offer was patient visits and simple words: the people are waiting. When a leader is looking for a core partner, sometimes it's not about what you can pay. It's about whether you will stoop low enough to be seen. Zhuge Liang first showed his strength right after leaving the mountains. He helped form an alliance with Wu before the battle at Red Cliffs. On the southeastern side, Zhou Yu was the commander, and Zhuge Liang served as a guest strategist. Look at how they matched wits, borrowing arrows with straw boats, using the fog so Cao Cao's men would fire. Then debating the scholars of Wu without losing any ground. These stories are colored with romance, sure. But the core idea is clear. If you're the weaker side in an alliance, you can't just bring words. You have to bring a mind that others can trust. Zhou Yu had talent and jealousy. The novel gives him that famous line, "Born Zhou Yu, why born Zhuge Liang?" It narrows his heart a little too much. In real history, Zhou Yu was a leading general of his time. He probably never said that bitter line. But when two brilliant minds share one alliance, internal friction is always a risk. You might meet the same question in today's joint projects. When success comes, whose credit is it? Think about the memorial on going to battle. It says, "I was a common man, farming in Nanyang, just trying to survive in chaotic times, not chasing fame among lords. The late emperor did not despise my low station and visited my thatched hut 3 times." Those are Zhuge Liang's own words, from official history, not the romance. A person trusted to that degree rests not only on intelligence, but on loyalty. He heard the words at White Emperor's city, "You may take the throne yourself." But he chose the road of assisting the young lord instead. He launched 6 campaigns from Qishan, marched north toward the Central Plains. Then on Wuzhang Plains, in the autumn wind, he died in his camp. Let's set the scene on the Wuzhang Plains. In the romance, Zhuge Liang lights the 7-star lamp. Then Wei Yan bursts into the tent. The main lamp goes out. Zhuge Liang sighs, "Life and death have their order, nothing can be forced." That part is fiction. But those 4 words, "life and death have their order," the real Zhuge Liang would have accepted them. He wrote a letter to his son. He said, "Cultivate quiet to refine yourself. Cultivate thrift to nurture virtue. Without detachment, your aim cannot be clear. Without stillness, you cannot reach far." This is a man who fought every day. Yet he left his child the words quiet and thrift. Think about it, the busier your days, the more those 2 words deserve a place by your pillow. Not doing nothing. Just keeping part of your heart unbound to the battlefield. He marched out. He died before victory. Ever since, heroes' sleeves are wet with tears. Du Fu wrote that line about Zhuge Liang. Honestly, he could have written it about anyone who gave everything and couldn't see the result. You know the taste, you worked late until the project still failed. You stayed with your parents through that last road, yet you could not keep them. Zhuge Liang knew that taste. He wasn't a god. He was the extreme of the human, clever, diligent, careful, but unable to turn the great tide. The realm returning to Jin wasn't one man's failure. It was the wheel of the age. One more Zhuge Liang story that fits bedtime, the southern campaign against Menghua. 7 captures, 7 releases. Menghua was a leader from the south. He kept getting caught. He kept getting let go. Until the 7th time, he surrendered from the heart. This wasn't just about force. Think of it as psychological war. Kill a man once, you make a generation of enemies. Win his heart once, you bring peace to a whole region. Zhuge Liang knew Shu Han had limited strength. Couldn't keep bleeding on the frontier forever. So he aimed at hearts first. Leading a team. Raising a child. Handling a problem that keeps coming back, you may not need 7 captures and 7 releases. But you might need to see this, some struggles aren't won in one go. They're won when the other side stops fighting you inside. Of course, Zhuge Liang was half right, half wrong. After that memorial, his northern campaigns dragged on. Taxes ran dry. People grew tired. Scholars still argue about it. Even saints take wrong roads. Don't make him a god. Let him be a man who tried with everything he had. We're about halfway through tonight. The wind on Wuzhang Plains hasn't finished blowing yet. Just one small request: if this voice has kept you company, tap like and subscribe. Think of it as adding a little oil to the lamp in the dark. You don't have to open your eyes. One finger is enough. Done or not done, both are fine. Good. Let's continue with the three kingdoms. Let me tell you something hidden in the three kingdoms. Most people just see the blades and the fire. But the real thread, it's the human heart. Take Liu Bei. Why could he rise? Of course Guan Yu and Zhang Fei stood with him. But think about it: Zhao Yun at Changban, riding in and out 7 times. Huang Zhong at Dingjun Mountain, cutting down Xiahou Yuan. Ma Chao joining Shu. These men followed him. Not just because of brotherhood, but because of legitimacy. Liu Bei called himself a kinsman of the Han imperial house. He said he was a descendant of Prince Jing of Zhongshan. Scholars argue about whether that's true. But here's the thing: in that world, in that age, orthodox lineage mattered. Say you are the rightful line, and people will stand beside you. Now, the entry into Shu, that's another main thread of the book. Lu Zhang invited Liu Bei into the Riverlands to fight Zhang Lu. Pang Tong gave a plan. And Liu Bei hesitated. Taking another man's territory, that stains a name. But Pang Tong said, if you don't do it now, the chance is gone forever. Later Pang Tong died at Falling Phoenix Slope. So Liu Bei cut off his path back. He turned on Liu Zhang. He took Yi province. You see, the romance tells this very truthfully: good men make ugly decisions. They don't suddenly become villains. No. Circumstance pushes them there. You don't need to imagine Liu Bei as a perfect saint. Just imagine a man, trapped in the cracks of chaos. Trying not to be too bad to his brothers, or to common people. That's when you are close to the warmth of the book. Think about Sun Quan. Maybe you don't follow him too closely. But he took over from his father and brother, held the southeast. He knew how to pick people. Zhou Yu. Lu Su. Lu Mang. Lu Sun, one after another, generation to generation. His late years weren't kind to him. Honestly, he deposed the eldest son, put a younger one in, and the court never settled. That's another story. But around Red Cliffs? He was the one who held the board steady. Here's the thing: the three kingdoms weren't really about 3 men. They were 3 different systems clashing. Cao Wei had institutions, had talent, had the northern economy. Eastern Wu had the Yangtze as its moat and a real navy. And Shu Han had Zhuge Liang plus the Han imperial flag, but the weakest in people and resources. You also hear a lot about Sima Yi. He just outlasted everyone. Outlasted Cao Cao, Cao Pai, and Cao Rui. Outlasted Zhuge Liang. In the end, his grandson Sima Yan pushed Wei aside and founded Jin. The realm came together again. Folks say it with a bit of edge: the 3 kingdoms return to Jin, Jin returns to Sima. A whole lifetime of war, and the winner was the family that just held on. That isn't an accident, you know. Rise and fall sometimes depends not on who fights best, but on who lives longest and who knows how to wait. Over in Shu, after Zhuge Liang died, Jiang Wei picked up the dream of northern campaigns. 9 times he marched toward the central plains. Defeat after defeat, and still he got up again. until Shu fell first. You might not know Jiang Wei was originally a defector from Wei. Zhuge Liang saw something in him, taught him everything. In official history, Jiang Wei was talented. But Shu's strength had been draining for years. Those campaigns? Honestly, they were like trying to keep an old dream breathing by force. The romance tells his story with full weight. A man who saw the tide against him and marched anyway. Was it stubborn loyalty? Or just refusing to fail that trust? Historians still go back and forth. For tonight, just hold one line: a person can hold up the shell, but only so long, after everything inside has already emptied. Companies, teams, relationships. All of them have that hour, still moving, still looking normal on the surface, but the core is gone. And the one still bracing? The one who can't let go? That one is the most tired and the most heartbreaking. Then there's Eastern Wu. A softer story. Sun Quan pushing a rough soldier named Lu Meng to read. After Lu Meng studied, people said, separate 3 days, look with fresh eyes. This isn't the flashy part of the romance. But for bedtime? It tenderly says, people can change. Don't lock anyone into an old impression. Not even yourself. That you lying here tonight, you can also look at tomorrow with fresh eyes. A few smaller figures deserve a quiet thought before you slip off. Well, let's talk about Yang Xiu. He was Cao Cao's secretary, and honestly, he was clever past the point of smart. He figured out Cao Cao's chicken rib password, and for that, he was executed for disturbing morale. Think about it, cleverness needs a right place. Stand beside a leader and show too much, it gets dangerous. The truth isn't pleasant, but it is what it is. Then there's Pang Tong. They called him Phoenix Young, ranked with Zhuge Liang. He died from an arrow in midstream while entering Shu. He was only 36. Fate sometimes makes no sense at all. The brightest star can fall without warning. Now, Dao Chan in the romance, she's the heart of the chain stratagem. She used beauty to split Dong Zhuo and Lu Bu. But here's the thing, official history has no such person. She is entirely romance invention. So know this as you listen, to make it vivid, the romance will create people and scenes for you. The stretch with Dong Zhuo, Wang Yun, and the chain stratagem is one of the bloodiest early parts. Dong Zhuo enters the capital, deposes and installs emperors, rules with cruelty. Wang Yun sets the chain stratagem, uses Dao Chan to turn Dong Zhuo and Lu Bu against each other, and Dong Zhuo is killed. Set that beside the peach garden, the contrast hits you. Both are gatherings, but one gathers fear and desire. Both are scatterings, but this one scatters in rivers of blood. Before sleep you don't need to think about gore. Just remember this, power without limits drags everyone into the same whirlpool. Wang Yun was later killed by Li Ju and Guisi. The plot succeeded for a moment, but life didn't last. Those who scheme others are often swallowed by larger schemes. Put it all together, and Romance of the Three Kingdoms is really just a story of rise and fall. Think of the startup, the Peach Garden Oath, when the core team first came together. Then the growth, 3 visits to a hut, and finally a clear strategy. The peak hits after the Battle of Red Cliffs, when 3 kingdoms stand. Then the decline, Guan Yu loses Jing province, and the defeated Yiling drains Shu Han's strength. After Zhuge Liang dies, Jiang Wei fights 9 campaigns north, but he never brings the realm back. Endgame, Sima usurps Wei, Wu and Shu surrender, and the land is unified. You don't need to memorize any of that. Just knowing there's a rise and a fall, that's enough. Long divided, must unite, long united, must divide. 9 words. The circle turns, and it comes back around. In the epilogue, a few rhymed lines get passed around among the people. Thus runs the great trend of the realm: long divided, must unite, long united, must divide. On weekends, people add another line: see Ma Zhao's heart, passers-by all know. Meaning everybody could see his ambition to steal the throne, even strangers on the road. When the story ends, the winner isn't the most righteous. It's the one who endured and waited the longest. For a bedtime listen, that's a little cold. But after that chill, you can breathe easier. You don't have to fight for any kingdom. Your blanket is your territory. And tonight, there's no Sima Zhao, no Lu Sun. Just a lamp you can switch off. But Luo Guanzhong didn't write the Three Kingdoms just to teach you tricks for hurting others. He wrote about Cao Cao, his greatness, and his suspicion. Liu Bei's kindness, and his stubbornness. Zhuge Liang's wisdom, and that exhausting loyalty that still couldn't restore the Han. Nobody is purely good or purely evil. They're all people struggling inside something much bigger than themselves. That's what makes this bedtime epic worth hearing. It's loud enough, long enough, that you can follow with your eyes closed. And it's human enough that you see colleagues, leaders, and even yourself. How to gather people. How to lose them. How to do the right thing at the wrong time or the wrong move at the right moment, by fate. The memorial on going to battle has one line meant for bedtime: honor worthy ministers, keep petty men at a distance, and the early Han prospered. Favor petty men, push worthy ministers away, and the late Han declined. Zhuge Liang was teaching Lu Shan. But really, he's speaking to anyone who holds power. The people closest to you decide how far you can go. Tonight, you don't need to audit who around you is petty. Just a soft reminder: before sleep, scroll a little less of what drains you. Leave a little more room for people who truly wish you well. That itself is a kind of honoring worthy ministers. And Romance of the Three Kingdoms offers one more bedtime lesson, except the unfinished. Here's the thing about the Three Kingdoms. Zhuge Liang didn't restore the Han. Guan Yu never returned to Jing. Liu Bei didn't unify the realm. Cao Cao couldn't destroy Wu and Shu. No one got the ending they wanted. But each kept moving. Kept giving what they could, on their own track. Maybe your to-do list is still unfinished tonight. That thing you've been meaning to start, not yet begun. Your child not yet grown. Your parents still aging. The Three Kingdoms? They just tell you honestly, imperfection is normal. If you gave your effort, you can let go. And there's another layer to think about. What stance did Luo Guanzhong take when he wrote it? Well, officially, he honors Liu, he denigrates Cao. Liu Bei is painted as the benevolent ruler, Cao Cao as the crafty hero. That's common, ever since Song and Yuan times. Treat Shu as legitimate, Wei as the rebel. But if you actually read closely, Cao Cao often feels more modern. He's practical, good at using people, wrote decent poetry. And Liu Bei? He sometimes seems harder than the saint the romance wants you to see. He also errs. He also acts on temper. Good literature does not flatten people into paper. So, listening to the Three Kingdoms at bedtime, you really don't need to take sides. Who resembles you is hard to say. By day maybe you're busy like Cao Cao. By night you're tired like Liu Bei. And somewhere inside you there's a Tao Yuan Ming who would rather just retire to those chrysanthemums by the eastern fence. One last small story, to tuck you into sleep. Zhao Yan at Changban, Cao Cao's great army was closing in. Liu Bei fled south. He left his wife and child behind. Zhao Yun rode back alone. 7 times into Cao Cao's host, 7 times out. He found Liu Bei's lady, she threw herself into a well, and he carried the infant Edo through the ring of soldiers. Cao Cao watched from a hill and said, "A true tiger general." Zhao Yun handed Edo to Liu Bei. and Liu Bei he threw the child to the ground. He said, "For this brat I nearly lost a great general." The romance writes it that way, to show Liu Bei loved his officers more. The official history might not have the throne child at all. But hear it another way. In the logic of chaos, one adult was more useful than one child. Cold to say. But that was the real value order of that time. Tonight, you don't have to make that choice. You can safely love your child and love yourself. The three kingdoms belong to another age. We read them to cherish this night where you need not ride 7 times through an army just to survive. One more thing tonight. After Zhuge Liang died, Shuhan was governed by Zhang Wan and Fei Yi in turns. They focused on resting the people and quieting the arms. Not like Zhuge Liang's non-stop northern campaigns. That's a different kind of clarity, really knowing you can no longer fight, and letting common people breathe first. Think about it. Organizations and people both have moments when the knife just has to be sheathed. Remember last episode, in Zhuangzi, we talked about Cook Ding putting away his knife after butchering. In the Three Kingdoms, what Zhang Wan and Fei Yi did was pretty much that. They sheathed the knife. Not surrender, you understand. Just wiping the blade clean, and letting the ones below get one good night's sleep. 2,000 years later, why are we still listening to the Three Kingdoms? Because they tell the life we still live. How to stand in a team. How to speak before a leader. After failure, did you find the courage to try again? When trust and betrayal crossed, could you still believe in people? The book is loud, I know. But honestly, it's also warm. Think about that cup of wine in the peach garden. That wind on Wuzhang Plains. That word of entrustment at White Emperor City. When Luo Guanzhong wrote, the storytellers of Song and Yuan had already been telling these tales for centuries. He didn't make it up from scratch. He gathered the scattered legends, the official records, the bits of folk memory, and shaped them into one book you can lie down and hear whole. So what we listen to tonight, it's not just a century of kingdoms rising and falling. It's centuries of Chinese people chewing over the same history. Slowly settling into size and understanding. You don't need to remember any battle's name. The images will stay on their own. 3 men bowing in a peach garden. Fire on the river at red cliffs, lighting half the sky. Zhuge Liang playing zither on the city tower, and Sima Yi below, doubting an ambush, not entering. Autumn wind on Wuzhang Plains, an unfinished sigh. The day you feel you cannot hold on, at work or in a relationship, maybe one image will rise and tell you something. 70 years. 800 people. No one walked away unscathed. Your best is enough. If only one line could stay by your pillow, I'd choose the 9 characters Luo Guanzhong placed at the volume's head: long divided, must unite; long united, must divide. This is not to tell you to lie flat. It's to let you know today's tightness, today's chaos, will also pass. Long united will divide again. Long divided will unite again. Nothing stays forever on your head. Today's problem, on a longer timeline, might be only one chapter. Sleep. This chapter ends here. Tomorrow when you wake, we will meet again in another book. Let me ask you a small question before sleep. In the Three Kingdoms, who would you have a drink with? Cao Cao, brewing wine and talking about heroes? Liu Bei, at the Peach Garden Oath? Or Zhuge Liang, laying out the Longzhong plan? Or maybe you'd rather sit with Tao Yuanming, the retired poet who hated all that killing. He just wanted his chrysanthemums by the eastern fence. You don't have to answer now. Tell me in the comments when you wake. I really do read every one. If you like nights like this, subscribe to the channel and tap the little bell. Next time we'll read Journey to the West. The Three Kingdoms are all about human schemes, gathering and scattering. Journey to the West is a different road. 81 trials, all for the scriptures. Some people call it a map of one person's heart. From killing fields to practice, we'll switch rivers tomorrow night and walk slow. Keep the lamp dim. Pull up the blanket. Great affairs of the realm, divided long, must unite, united long, must divide. But tonight, just close your eyes and unite with sleep. Cao Cao's song about wine in hand can wait till morning. Zhuge Liang's memorial can wait. Right now, you don't need to prove a thing. This is Bedside Book Voice. Good night. See you in the pages.